Hi everybody, this is Lou McNally. Coming up next on Made in Maine, it's a look at people who took an idea and made it happen. We're going to visit with the founders and some of the musicians from the Portland Chamber Music Festival. Also in Portland, we're going to visit with Audiophile magazine and investigate the audiobook phenomenon. But you'll find me here at a bend in the Stillwater branch of the Penobscot River, where underwater logging is bringing up some fine old woods from the chilly depths of the river. All coming up next on Made in Maine.
Major funding for production of Made in Maine is provided by the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development, introducing Maine's quality businesses to the world. By KeyBank, committed to creating a partnership with businessmen and businesswomen to make banking work for Maine. With additional funding provided by Friends and Neighbors at CMP, the Smart Power people.
Have you ever noticed how many people come up with terrific ideas to change their careers or start a new business? And then have you noticed how many people actually make it happen? Well, that's what this edition of Made in Maine is all about. People who took an idea and made it happen. And to begin with, producer Ann Seeloff is going to introduce us to the two women who began the Portland Chamber Music Festival.
You think of a classical music concert as an event that you attend where everybody's in these stiff jackets and they walk on and off stage and then they're on the plane already, you know, by the time you applaud. And I think we select people very much that we feel will be appealing to an audience.
This physical enjoyment of playing my instrument that I've tried to describe to people, and I don't know how, but just the actual feeling of the bow in my hand and the actual feeling of producing the music is something like that's part of me in a way that I can't describe with anything else.
Hi, this is a message for Judith Quimby. This is Dina Levine with the Portland Chamber Music Festival.
We took a trip up to the Ben & Jerry's factory. It was in Vermont, and on the way home we combined with having talked about the idea of wanting to play chamber music somewhere and also inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit of Ben & Jerry, we thought that perhaps we tentatively started to talk about starting something ourselves.
It kind of started out as a joke. I mean, we had started talking about the idea of making a project together, and we were sort of goading each other on saying, see, look, Ben & Jerry could do it. Like, it wasn't entirely serious, like, boy, they are very impressive businessmen. It was more.
Like, you could be Ben and
like you be
I'll
Ben.
be Jerry Levine.
Yeah, like, and we were like joking and watching the movies about Ben and Jerry and like thinking that's us. And you know, it sort of started out as a big joke and got more and more serious as it went. So these look great.
Oh, great.
Totally.
Glad you like them.
Aren't they good?
Yeah.
It's amazing the stuff we don't know. I mean, when we first had to make a budget, no idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely no idea.
I mean, it's been great hands-on training. I'd say that, you know, the two of us now could probably go through how to start something like this with someone. And it's been for the love of the eventual goal of producing something like this that we've learned about all the business stuff in between.
Once we made this decision, it was like we went over a cliff. And I don't think there was any minute after that we thought maybe we wouldn't do it.
I think, yeah, when we made the commitment to doing it, I think we already sort of had it there in our heads as a vision. And I think we're both pretty project-oriented people and enjoy bringing things together like this. We also had the commitment of probably 12, it was, really wonderful artists for the first season, and we called them up and we said, we have no budget yet, we have no money, we have a hall and we have a place you can stay, and we really want to get this off the ground. And a lot of people said, you know, we said, we want to pay you X, but we're not sure if we'll come up with it. And they said, you know, we'd love to help you to start this out. And it ended up at the end that we did pay everyone their fee, and we did have immense response from the community, which was great. But we had the artists help in the beginning.
We had goodwill.
Yeah, a lot of goodwill. Yeah.
Jenny and Dina, they may make all the phone calls, they may sign the checks and book the hall, but frankly, I'd rather have them do that. The part that I enjoy is making the music, and when it comes to that, we're all equals. Everybody has their own say, everybody has their own personality, their own thing to contribute. And although they're the organizers, they just put it in motion. They just put it in motion and let what happens happen.
We're kicking it a little bit at the fourth bar.
There's no group leader in chamber music. So, for instance, in an orchestra, you have a conductor who says, this is my idea about music, and I'd like you to execute it the following way. And for us, in a group, let's say of 6 people, nobody's in charge, which makes it really difficult in one way, but really inspiring in another way, because we all have to kind of slog it out and just come to a consensus, which is not an easy thing with strong-minded musicians. Our artists live in the community with families.
You do that after most concerts too?
In following years, a family will call and say, is Larry coming back? You know, we want him, and we have someone who's had a space for the same artist for 5 years. So people who will become part of the community and actually aren't only just performers.
The audience does somehow absorb the fact that we've all been living together for the weeks prior to the concert, and that we've been, you know, playing charades here in the living room at night, or watching movies and drinking beer, and just kind of bonding in that way and having a great time. And when you walk out on stage with people that are your friends and that are behind you, and you can support them in that way, that's very much what chamber music is all about. It's about that trust on stage and that ability to have a vulnerability in yourself to express that to an audience. We worked very hard in our programming to have a balance between those pieces that the audience might be familiar with, that are very tuneful and by, you know, the old masters, let's say, and also new and really inventive works.
Jennifer Elowich, who's one of the directors, is someone I've known for a few years. You know, she has, to her credit, been very interested in doing new music. So by email, she asked me if I would be interested in maybe having one of my works played here. I thought it would be even more interesting to write a work for the festival.
We want to go against the idea that people, when they hear we're going to play new music, they expect ugly, academic music that, you know, they want to cover their ears during. And there's a lot of music. It's not all pretty in the same kind of sense that Mozart might be pretty, but it might be shocking or thought-provoking or beautiful or colorful, but things that people might think, oh, wow, I actually want to hear this.
As musicians, we spend so many hours alone practicing that it's such a joy to be able to share that with the other musicians, to be able to share that with the audience members. And I can't overstate what a high level of music making happens at this festival. It's the high point of my year.
Each year after we leave, before I go drive back to New York, I'll stand on the stage and just before I drive back and look at the hall and you get this incredible feeling about having brought that to an audience, that you can somehow bring them into your musical understanding and share with them what I feel that we can share with them what's so special to us.
I wonder if Ben and Jerry really know how many people they sparked into doing something new. Well, we're going to move right now from the formality of chamber music to the informal setting we're at right now. It's a bend in the Stillwater branch of the Penobscot River, right where Birch Stream comes in. It's called Pea Cove, and we're here with Wendell Scott and Charlie Bragg. Charlie, how are you today?
Great.
Wendell,
Thanks.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
You're taking logs out of the river
That's
and
correct.
making lumber out of it. Whatever gave you that idea?
Well, a few years ago, a good friend of ours came up to us with a idea of logging the Penobscot River. Well, when he first brought it up to me, I thought it was a little crazy, and he explained to me how it being submerged in the cold water would preserve the material.
Well, you know, I thought that when they floated the logs down, all the logs floated and they went to the mill. How'd they end up on the bottom?
Predominantly they do. They evidently found it to be quite profitable to float them, and it was minimal sinkage. 10% of the logs sank.
Oh, you're talking about
the
10% of the logs over a couple of
millions
hundred.
and millions of board feet of logs.
Holy smokes.
So quite a few did make it to the mill, enough to be profitable to these mill owners and the log drivers. And what we're doing is out there, we're getting the few that sank and on the bottom, and we're left alone.
Now, you getting to the point now, you've been doing it for a little while, do you get down there and actually select which logs you want to bring up now, or do you just go for what you can
No,
get?
Lou, they all look the same underwater. Yeah, the bark is all gone off these trees because of the current of the river. And the only thing we do look for is to make sure they were axe cut.
I see.
And that puts us before 1850, when after 1850 we believe the crosscut came off.
Right. So you know you're getting the old
So
wood
we
by
know
then.
we're getting the very old virgin timber, the very first cut from Maine.
Unbelievable.
Right.
That's great. All right. Well, that works good. What do you got here?
This is black spruce.
Black spruce.
This is, we found this in the bottom of the river. It's a real pretty wood. We built these two items
I
out
can
of
see that, yeah. You
black
got a little
spruce.
little shelf routine going
Yeah.
there. That's right. But the grain is beautiful. You don't see the grain
It's a
like
real
that.
pretty tight grain. Yeah. Back in those days, the trees grew so slow due to how many trees there were in the forest that sheltered them from the sunlight.
So you get a real tight
And
grain.
so you get a real tight grain.
Makes it a stronger
that
wood.
way. Yeah.
So basically, even though we can get black spruce in spots, we get different grains. It's a prettier wood, and the birch hasn't grown here in 200 years.
That's what we were told.
Now, who owns the river?
The Penobscot Indian Nation.
Aha.
They gave us permission and have been working with us for quite a few years now on
We really need to
taking
thank
the
them
logs out,
for that.
and they're real cautious on preserving the river
Sure.
and making sure it doesn't get damaged, and we're staying pretty primitive for that reason, so
Sounds like
we
a great
can take
use.
care of the river taking it out.
Great use of natural resources. We're going to head out to the boats now and see just exactly how you do this operation. But first, I want to send you back down to Portland. You know, the drive from southern Maine up here to Stillwater and Orono and Old Town is a long haul. There's no two ways about it. Sometimes the radio stations are in, sometimes they're not. You know what really works is that audio book. Put it in the tape deck and it can make that drive go by in a flash. We're going to learn more about that right now with producer Peter Klaus and Audiophile Magazine in Portland.
Most of the themes in my comic strip Dilbert involve workplace situations.
It was almost 8:30 when we arrived, time for the residents to leave.
Random House Audiobooks presents A Reporter's Life by Walter Cronkite. Read for you by the author.
An audiobook is a recording, usually of a text. Audiobooks are available on an amazing number of subjects, everything from biography and history to mysteries to thrillers and various kinds of self-improvement. Well, I was pretty interested in audiobooks to begin with. And when I went to look for information about audiobooks to find out more about what was available, what was good, why it was good, there was almost nothing written. Since I sometimes will take an idea and not let common sense get in the way of a good idea, I thought, oh, well, I could write reviews of audiobooks. Wouldn't that be interesting? And I would focus on what was really wonderful about audiobooks, which was their performance, and who was narrating, and how the voices were conveyed, and how the story was conveyed. And the time was right, I guess, because now, 5 years later, the magazine is a national magazine. We are a definitive source for reviews of audiobooks. Our reviewers and our articles are widely respected, and we have a great following all across the country. There is no other publication of any kind that deals specifically and exclusively with audiobooks.
It started as predominantly as a library journal for audiovisual librarians to use for collection development purposes, and more recently we've looked to the consumer marketplace, which is, depending on the numbers you believe, it's somewhere between 12 and 50 million people are currently listening to audiobooks with some regularity, and we're trying to reach that marketplace. Well, things like 75% of all audiobook listening is done in the car, so commuters are right away a good potential market.
Mordecai wanted a trial, an enormous, noisy production with lights and cameras and printed words focused not on him, but on the declining plight of his people.
We do 6 issues a year, and what we try to do is get a real meaty version for each issue, and we do a June, July, and so on and so forth. And what that allows us to do is to combine more information and more reviews. I think that we have a great publication because of the small amount of people that work here, because when I'm laying out a page that Robin gives me copy for, if for whatever reason it doesn't look right, I can go right into her and say, Robin, this is not working. It's a more cohesive way of working. There's 4 of us, and we all work as a team, and it turns out beautifully.
The fact that we're based here in Maine, a lot of people seem to like that when we talk to them over the phone. They get the perception that we're a small company, that we really are there for the people, and it's true, we are. I think it would be different if we were in New York, but I think it's better that we're here.
I love to write about people in different venues of listening. We had a very interesting feature about a truck driver. The trucker, whose name is Matt Hammersley, had called me up about something about audiobooks, and I interviewed him on the phone, and he kept telling me how much he loved audiobooks and truckers listening to audiobooks. It's a big business for people selling audiobooks. I did an interview with George Carr, who is a sculptor. And he listens to audiobooks while he's doing all the very fine work on his sculptures, and we have a great picture of him with headphones on. We have some wonderful pictures of a group of 4 girls who are grooming their horses out at the Vienna Farms in Gorham, and they're all listening to audiobooks. They've all got their earphones on while they're carrying the water and currying the horses. One of the most exciting stories, I think, that we've done this year was a story about children and students and audiobooks. There was a teacher at Westbrook High School who had assigned audiobooks as part of her English literature classes. And so right in our backyard, I found one of the most exciting programs that I've ever heard, where audiobooks were used in schools.
I started listening to tapes a lot of the times when I was exercising or walking, and decided I just loved it, and wrote some reviews and became a fan, and wanted the kids to have that experience too. Part of the experiment for us was to find that private domain, the place where the reader and the book come together without any interference and for enjoyment. And I think that in schools too often we're very dogmatic about our reading and we make the kids analyze and write and all of that. And for this particular experiment, I was really interested in joy, you know, fun, the engagement of the reader, the thing that would make them pick up a book again. And they came into class on an afternoon and I passed out art materials and I said, go for it. What we're doing here is representing your book in the artistic format. And they had a ball doing that. And they had to produce artwork, an art cover, that they had to produce a review, and that they had to present it to the class.
I like it better than reading. I think it's you know, a lot more relaxing, and you know, at night I can just kind of sit back in my easy chair and recline and turn the tapes on. It's nice.
You know, over the last 5 years, AudioFile has reviewed hundreds and hundreds of audio books. And that archive of reviews is now being licensed to people like Amazon.com. So chances are the next time you read a review of an audiobook on the net, it was written by AudioFile in Portland. Well, now we're back up in Old Town here on this bend in the Stillwater branch of the Penobscot River. Charlie, before we get going here, do you use any technology in your work?
Not much. I guess you could say the most technology I use is my little organizer here. This is my memory I keep in my pocket.
All right. So what would you do first here to get going? You know, Wendell's all ready to go, right?
What we'll do is get Wendell on the sled and we'll drag him out for a log search and find a log and float it.
Sounds good to me. Well, let's get it underway.
Great.
Step one.
We have a planer board that I'm towed around on until we locate the logs that we're looking for.
Are there any restrictions that you had to go through to you know, in your process here, environmental restrictions, things like that?
We had to file permits with LERC and Land Use Committee, and we had to get permits through the Penobscot Indian Nation.
Right.
And they sent a biologist out with us.
Right.
And he watched us pull a couple of logs to see how much sediment stirring it would be.
I get you.
To see if we needed to set up screens.
Mm-hmm.
Sediment catching screens.
But be careful enough you don't have to do
right,
any of that.
and so by floating them, lifting them off the bottom, it created very little silt change, so it was adequate for, you know, keeping the environment okay in the river.
All right, so now we've reached the log that you found. You got it all buoyed off. The next step is to get these inner tubes in the water, right?
Correct.
Now, how do you blow them up once you get them there?
Well, Wendell has a spare air line on his two-stage regulator there, and he's holding it up. He's going to blow up the tubes as necessary.
Alrighty.
Some of the logs are big enough that they need 2 and 3 tubes on each end.
Before a tree can rot, it has to be above 70 degrees and it has to have air. So under the water, it gets neither.
The logs have been totally preserved
right.
because of no air being submerged. There's no sap in the logs.
Right.
And it makes some pretty material. Yeah, what you'll see come up first is one end of the log.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it'll come up and then he'll go to the other end and float that end.
Hey, there it is.
There it is. There we go.
Right.
Here's one end. Now Kurt gets one end up. We usually wait for 2, but as fortunate as we are on this one, we can get the noose started while one end is up.
Oh, I get
Then
you.
when it comes up, before the current grabs it or the wind, we've got one end noosed
all ready to go.
You have a tough time with it?
Might even be a hardwood by the feel of it.
Yeah, really?
Predominant wood we get from the river is pine, spruce, fir.
Well, like you say, this one here could be a hardwood for you.
It could be a hardwood, yes. Because of the weight of it and the size, doesn't really matter so much on the size, but when you're down there, a tree that size as this one, you can actually lift it. And one that's harder to lift, is usually a hardwood.
I see.
Which we don't get that much of.
You're floating now.
Mm-hmm. It's floating now. You'll notice it's just underneath the surface because this log's holding the tubes down, and that's how we pull them.
And that's all you need.
That's it. That's all we need.
You pull it back in.
Yeah.
Head to the sawmill.
That's it.
Well, I'll tell you, I've seen some interesting things on Made in Maine, but 150-year-old pieces of wood certainly can't beat that. These are all great examples of people who took an idea and made it happen. From the Portland Chamber Music Festival to Audiophile Magazine to the folks here at Underwater Logging. What a concept. And it's all made in Maine. This is Lou McNally. Hope you enjoyed the show. Join us again next time, won't you, for another edition of Made in Maine.
Major funding for production of Made in Maine is provided by the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development, introducing Maine's quality businesses to the world. By Key Bank, committed to creating a partnership with businessmen and businesswomen to make banking work for Maine. With additional funding provided by Friends and Neighbors at CMP, the Smart Power people,